Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. Jacob, it's finally game week. The Kentucky Wildcats take on the Toledo Rockets in just 2 short days away. Saturday, August 30th, 12:45 kickoff. I know you've been negative. I know you have been. I know I've gotten you to the positivity side. I've gotten you over here, and now you're here with me on the positive train. How pumped are you that Kentucky football is only 2 days away?
I don't think you can call me negative when we picked the same amount of wins. And I even had them beating the team down the road. So,
It's true.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the negative one anymore. I told you all off season when I was predicting 3 wins. By the time, late August rolled around and we were counting down the days, I was going to talk myself into it. But I'm so excited. College football in general, Cats 12:45. Texas, Ohio State at noon. I'm going to be at the biggest UK sports bar around in Dickman's on Saturday to do a fantasy draft and watch the game and drink some beers. And I'm stoked we're here, Cam. We finally made it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I do want to say condolences out to the Max in Cold Spring.
Yeah.
Jacob, you sent me that news. A place we've watched many Kentucky basketball games. Had a bunch of cold beverages there together. Enjoyed some great pizza and some great wings. Has announced that they are closing today. It's just terrible news. Really is. You sent it to me. Kind of ruined my week, if I'm being honest with you. We needed one last Kentucky athletic event out there to send it off in the right way, and we're just not going to get it.
Yep, it's brutal. Kind of surprised it made it this long. Max was the only place you could walk into 10 minutes before a UK basketball game and have no problem finding a seat. So, it checks out, but I did love that Max. I guess I'm going to have to start going to the one on Main Strasse now, but it's just not going to be the same.
Yeah, definitely will not be the same. A lot of fun memories in that place. Hopefully, you're going to be making some new ones out at Dickman's while the Cats are rolling the Rockets. And that's obviously starting on Saturday. Jacob, I have secured my tickets to the home opener. Lower level for $18. Now, while that is awesome for myself, a cheap guy that loves a good discount and loves to be able to get some good seats while also paying a reasonable price, is that saying something that I can get lower level tickets for $18, what this fan base is really expecting for the season?
Yeah, I haven't been looking at it too much, but I kept thinking it's the first game. People will get into it. The place will, maybe not be sold out, but be pretty close. It always is for the first game. But, $18 lower level is, pretty absurd. You can't even, for the Cincinnati Reds who play 162 games and are 4.5 back and lost 4 out of their last 5, I don't think you could get a ticket for $18 this weekend besides all the way at the very top. So I'm a little concerned that that number was a little shocking to me when you told me right before we hopped on.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing up the Reds. You really wanted to get me down. Thanks for doing that. First sweep of the season, get swept by the Dodgers, and now the Mets decide that they want to start winning games. Reds are 1-5 in their last 6.
Mets I was wrong. I said 4 or 5. It's 5 or 6. So
yeah, just the polar opposites. But Jacob,
good news, they won't lose tonight.
At least they got us this far. They got us to where we're only 2 days away from the Kentucky football season kicking off. Now, guess what? We're going to need the Cats to take us all the way to basketball season and even further. I don't want to be checked out doing basketball podcasts with you solely just in October and not worrying about what the Cats are doing on the football field. And obviously, a lot of that starts this Saturday. I'm going to be there. It scares me that I can get tickets on Tuesday for $18 lower level to the first game of the season, especially a team that's supposed to win their conference is who we're playing, a team that's not too far away. Toledo's maybe 4.5, 5 hours from Lexington.
Yep.
It really does scare me that I was able to secure tickets for $18. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we're going to get a good amount of content down there for you guys with people tailgating before and after. And hopefully it comes with a Cats win. Jacob, I wasn't able to convince you to not go to Dickman's to the game. So you are some of these fans that are not able to attend. I'm scared of what I'm going to see. Because I think if you go out there and this stadium looks like it did for maybe like the Ohio game last year, where it's just spots where the stadium is empty. I mean, as a player, how can you get behind that? First game of the season, even the Reds, you mentioned them earlier. Team's always awful.
Yep.
Never in it. I mean, how long has it been since they won a playoff series? It's been so long. I don't even know if I was born the last time they won a playoff series. And yet, opening day in Cincinnati is one of the best holidays year round in the area. What do the Cats got to do to get some excitement before Saturday?
Well, I mean, I did just look, so I want to say, I mean, I don't know how great the crowd's going to be, but those $18 lower level seats appear to all be gone. It looks like now you're looking about double that, about 35, 36 bucks. So we're hiking up, slightly. I just think, the big thing I mentioned it when we gave our preview, like Kentucky's just got to win. The more I think about it, the more I'm talking to myself into this team winning by multiple scores. But yeah, I think if you win by 9+, I think it'll create all kinds of excitement, for Ole Miss the following week. I don't know. The big thing I would like to see is, it's weird because Kentucky, being a team that had kind of struggled against like these lesser teams in the past and like opening game, that was one of the best looking games they had last year. The offense, that was probably the most competent it looked. And then obviously it looked really good against Ohio, who was the MAC team that beat Toledo. So I think we're going to be able to, kind of move the ball on the ground. And then our defense, I expect us to keep Toledo into a very low scoring total.
Yeah, we're going to dive a little bit more into the game preview here in just a little bit. But earlier this week, the first depth chart of the season was released. First off, I mentioned it to you before we hopped on the podcast. I'm so sick and tired of the oars. This is the depth chart for a reason. You don't add the oars. It's not first string or this guy for first string. No, this is what the depth chart is for. I mean, just looking at some of the takeaways, obviously, we knew that Zach Calzada was going to be the starting quarterback. And honestly, I think that was more just a thing for Cutter to keep Cutter locked in and engaged throughout the season. Just say, hey, man, listen, you were close. You did impress us. But we're still going to turn it over to the 45-year-old Zach Calzada, and he's going to get the ball on opening day. But outside of that, I mean, I really don't see anything in here in this depth chart that really took me by surprise. The only thing that I will say I'm happy to see that Harley Gilmore is listed as their number one X receiver. I'm really excited to see that. And obviously, it comes with an or as well with J.J. Hester. All those receivers do. Something that scares me, really does scare me, is the fact that Bush Hamden came out and said nobody's really separated themselves in that wide receiver room to be wide receiver one. Now, is that going to be we have a bunch of good guys, so, death by volume? Is it going to be guys like that? Or do we just truly not have a good receiving core? I'm really scared to see that on Saturday, but that was probably my biggest takeaway from the depth chart. Wanting to see your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I took it, maybe nobody's stand out and been like phenomenal, but I think it's more of the, depth piece. I think, we talked about it a few weeks ago. This is probably, again, you're missing maybe like a Wandell Robinson, but from top to bottom, I think it's about as good of a receiver room as they've had, at least on paper. You got guys that have proven it in the SEC in the past, whether it's from, your transfers or, a guy like, Macklin from last year with this team. So I just think it's the deepest it's been. So I could understand maybe, you got a lot of really good receivers and nobody's kind of taken that jump to be like a true great number one. But I mean, this is a year where, if somebody gets hurt or somebody's not playing well, I think you got plenty of depth behind them to come in and, hop right in there and produce.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I love the depth in the receiver room. But we also know, I mean, just look at teams around the NFL that just have depth at the receiver room and nobody who really stands out to come as that number one. Usually, those offensive passing games don't work all that well. We need somebody who's going to be able to take the bulk of these catches. I don't know if that's going to be Kendrick Law. It seemed like that's who the, Bush Hamden and Mark Stoops were kind of pushing early that was going to be the guy who got you a lot of catches throughout the season. I don't know if that could be a choice to Lotto. I mean, they're both more of those slot guys. They're fighting for time together. And then really, I haven't heard anything about Jamori Macklin, good or bad. And I don't know if that's something to be concerned with, or if that's something to be, he's just steady as it comes, and expect him to do what he did towards the end of the year last year. But I mean, if you remember, Jamori came out, had a good start against Southern Miss, basically disappeared for 7, 8 weeks, was not a part of the offense, and then against Louisville and Texas started to come back. Like I said, a lot of guys that are competing for time. I feel comfortable with 6 guys running out there to play, a good amount of snaps at the receiving core. But I am a little concerned with, the high end talent that I think we might need from at least one of these guys. Because I think Hardley has that talent. I just don't know if Hardley has it between the ears right now, as he's just now turned 18.
Yep, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I think that guy can be Hardly Gilmore. But, to your point, he's got to keep his head on straight. He's got to make sure he's showing up to practice every day, not doing the, stuff that got him kicked out of Nebraska 2 months after getting there. But as far as Macklin goes, I fully expect just kind of the same Jamari Macklin we saw at the end of last year. I think even the coaching staff's made comments, throughout the offseason that they kind of did mismanage how they played him early in the year. He wasn't given the opportunities that he should have. And, I think you saw it once he hit the transfer portal, and you saw how hard they made sure to make him a priority to come back. And I'm sure there was a discussion of, we want to build off of how you finished the year last year. We know how good you can be. So, again, I don't foresee Jamari Macklin being like an elite number 1 SEC wide receiver, but I think he's going to be by far your most consistent receiver. And then there could be spurts from a, Hardly Gilmore or maybe a JJ Hester where they're going out there and, kind of developing into those true number 1s. I would assume that's the hope, at least.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about how we expect this offense to be able to take and win games, running the ball, play action, deep shots. I mean, that is Jamori Macklin. That's what he's going to have to thrive in, are those deep threats. I mean, North Texas, he had 11 touchdowns and 1,200 yards and averaged like 18 yards per catch, something ridiculous like that. And even last year had a crazy yards per catch. So he's going to have the time to show it. And I think this offense really pairs well with him. I think he's probably going to be the guy who you look back at the end of the year, probably going to be our leading receiver, but I don't think he'll be leading the team in receptions. So I feel like we've talked enough about the receiving core. I expect them to be good. I'm just hoping, 1 or 2 of those guys can take that next step. I will say, I know it's early. I know we haven't seen them play all together. The depth on this offensive line is something I feel like I haven't seen in quite some time. Like I'm looking at it, and outside, just of the starting 5, I mean, you feel good about 6, 7 guys, and I don't know when the last time you could look at a Kentucky offensive line and say, I feel good with any backups or even some of the starters playing valuable minutes. Just want to get your take on, what you thought of the offensive line and the depth chart that released.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously feel much more confident than we saw last year out of this offensive line. I mean, you've been preaching the offensive line for, a few months now. You said they would be one of the
drum. Let's do it.
You said they would be one of the top in the SEC. I don't know if I'm ready to join you there yet, but
just to make sure, I don't want anybody thinking we're going number 1 or top 3
of the top. Yeah. But I mean, this offensive line has a lot of experience, which obviously we've talked in depth about kind of the philosophy. It felt like changed from 2 years ago to now last year of what they did in the portal of instead of going and getting the guy that sat the bench at Alabama or Tennessee or Georgia or whatever, like we're going to go get guys that have proven it, and we've seen a lot of these guys prove it at a slightly lower level. Now, I agree with you that there's more depth than there was a year ago. I'm still obviously not the biggest Eric Woodford fan, so I mean we'll kind of see how they can develop since they've been at UK. I think that's probably been his biggest weakness is developing offensive linemen. He can go out there and recruit the heck out of them and get them here. But, I mean, it'll be interesting. I want to kind of see how Jagger can do sliding over to center. I expect him to be better there than he was at guard last year. At least that's the hope. But I do agree with you that the depth is there, and I do expect this unit to be very improved from a year ago now. Whether they get to top 5 in the SEC or, like Bush Hamden said, one of the best to ever play here, I guess we'll kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I will say, you thought my prediction was bold early in the offseason, and then Bush came out with that.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
listen, I beat him to it. Mine wasn't as bold, but I did love to hear him, kind of singing a tune that I had been singing there for a little bit. But I will say, the good thing about, you don't trust Wolford, I get it. I understand. But think about it. 3 of these guys are fully developed, basically,
Yep.
coming into the university. Shiaz Pete, Josh Braun, and Alex Wolschlager are guys that have already shown it, have already proven to be good. You have an all-SEC guy in there, and then Shiaz and Alex Wolschlager all-conference in theirs as well. So hopefully you don't need that much developing. And everything that I've heard about Jalen Farmer and the steps that he's taking, like I don't hear any interview where Jalen Farmer's name is not mentioned. And he was their best offensive lineman last year. So I'm looking for a big step forward from Jalen Farmer. And like I said, man, I really think this team's going to be able to run the ball really well. Is it going to show up against Toledo? I don't know. Week 1 is always kind of weird. It's kind of hard to find your footing in those games. So we'll see, how it starts to materialize. But
I mean, real quick, just they better against Toledo, right? Like if you're having trouble with your offensive line moving the football and moving the trenches to run the ball against Toledo, like it's not going to get any better against the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, and remind me a little bit about that later. I got a little bit more to say on that. But the running backs, let's go ahead and talk about them. I mean, obviously, we've talked about it. Dante Dowdell and Seth McGowan, a little thunder and lightning 1-2 duo of what we're expecting there. And then you have Jason Patterson and Jacob. I mean, what does Jamarian Wilcox do to consistently put himself in the doghouse? Like this guy's in the doghouse more than I am, more than you are, more than us combined. And we do some stupid things every now and again, and this guy's in the doghouse more than we are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is kind of crazy. I think you see just kind of how poor our running back room was last year. That your leading rusher can now be your 4th string. This was one I know we were talking about. You complained about the or. This is one I don't mind the or because I think
this one's where it's fine. Yeah,
like both of these guys are going to consistently get the ball, and I'm expecting a much improved run offense. One obviously because of the offensive line, but 2, I think you see it. Your leading rusher from a year ago is your 4th string right now. You have a lot of really good options to give the ball, and I'm kind of excited to get back to that. You got the power runner that you can give the ball to in those 3rd and shorts and at the goal line, and then you got a guy that can make some guys miss and break off some explosive runs.
I'm super excited to see these two. I don't want to say it this early because it's a lot of pressure to put on these guys, but a little Boom and Benny action.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I would be excited.
What do you think, man?
If Seth can be Boom Williams, I'm very excited about the season.
I'm telling you, man. It's 2 days before the first game. You knew I was going to get excited. You knew I was going to get up here. I told you before we started, even the off-season recordings. Yeah, we're down in the dumps. The little dog left us to the traitor, absolute traitor, left us. I told you I'd get here to where I'm going to spin almost everything into a positive, unless it involves Vince Marrow. It sucks just to say his name, honestly. Let's just get that out of the way with. All right, defensively. I really don't think there's been any surprises here. This is about what we've heard all offseason from the starters, is what you're looking at. Is there any guys in particular that we haven't discussed that maybe you want to shine a little light on before the season starts? Because I know one personally, Marquise Humphrey Grace, I don't think we've mentioned him enough. This guy was FCS Defensive Player of the Year last year. Obviously, yes, FCS. But to get that guy and get him in with David Gusta, another guy who you're expecting a lot of good things from, I'm excited. I don't think this is going to be a great unit. I don't think it's going to be, obviously like Josh Allen or Bud Dupree or I don't think we're going to have any top-end talent like that. But like Brad White's mentioned, I do think we have the ability to be able to actually rotate and move guys. Whereas last year it was, Dion, I know your back's broken. you got to play 70 snaps a game regardless. We just don't have the guys to put. So I like the volume that the defensive line has and the rotatability that they're going to have as well. Just want to spotlight a little Mike Priest Humphrey Grace because I don't think we've talked enough about him so far.
Yeah, I like the defensive line this year. I think it's going to be, obviously the secondary I think is the strength of this defense, but I think it's going to be right there with them. Obviously a lot of new faces. You're talking about the FCS Defensive Player of the Year. I'm excited to see more out of like Sam Green. You mentioned Gusta. That's obviously a big one. I think that's going to be another unit that's improved. It'll be nice to kind of, again, I don't think either unit's going to be like amazing, but it'll be nice to not be bottom in the SEC on the trenches on both sides of the football. And I think, to your point, you got enough bodies this year where you're not going to have that. I think we're going to be able to hopefully generate a pass rush. The problem, with Brad White's defense is he's not going to blitz a lot and help those guys, so they're going to have to go win one-on-one matchups a lot. But I think they have some pieces that'll be able to occasionally cause some havoc and make a play.
Yeah, we're going to get to it here in a second. I think these guys have got to be great against the run specifically. Honestly, the pass rush is what it is. I think this team's got to be better against the run than I do. I think they have to get after the passer, at least in my opinion. Because where I'm most concerned with is going to be these linebackers in run support.
Yeah.
You got two really thin linebackers in David Rayner and Alex Afari. 227 and 217 is the weights for your middle linebackers. This is coming after a year of having Garrett Jackson and Jamin Dumas-Johnson, who were both 240 plus. I love the guys in pass pro, not pass pro, but I love their ability in pass coverage. I'm a little worried about them between the tackles and having to take on blocks. So at this defensive line, Khalil Saunders, Josiah Hayes, David Gusta, we've got to find a way to keep these two clean. Because if we keep them clean, Alex Afari, obviously a former safety, he's got range. David Rayner's really fast and light as well. He's got range. If the defensive line's really good in run support, keeps those guys clean, I think it's going to make them look very, very good. If they don't, I think we're going to have big problems to start the season with.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of where I was going, talking about the secondary being, the strength. I do think this team's going to struggle against the run. The one thing is, I don't know how much it's going to matter against this Toledo team. This was one of a really poor rushing offense a year ago. I think you mentioned
they got
1,500 yards. They did get Chip. If he's healthy, I don't know. Who knows? But I think, down the line in SEC play, it's going to be an issue of concern. So I would like to see them at least show something against a poor rushing team like Toledo, and give us some hope for next week against Ole Miss.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. And, just to round out the depth chart, obviously with the corners, we knew it was DJ Waller and JQ Hardaway. And we knew the safeties just returning from last year, Ty Bryant and Jordan Lovett. This is where we expect this defense to be the best. I think you agree with that as well. Two long, rangy corners that can play bump and run, play press. They can play off end zone as well. And you remember that Ole Miss game last year? Max Harrison's out, doesn't play. JQ Hardaway and DJ Waller had their best games by far of their career. And you saw what that did for us. And that was against a team with Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and a very good offense. I don't think Toledo's going to be able to throw the ball very well in this game. Like I said, I'm worried about the run, specifically in this game. Obviously, you should be able to match up with them up front just from a size-wise. That's usually the biggest difference in these SEC versus MAC. It's just the trenches and, the size differences up front. But I'm expecting a big year, honestly, from all four of these guys. Ty Bryant, you hear everything you hear about him is he's taken a giant step. I've told you guys my bold prediction is JQ Hardaway is going to be an all-SEC corner, and it's very hard to be an all-SEC corner. And, DJ Waller towards the end of the year was fantastic as well, and Jordan Lovett's played a lot of football. I expect these guys to be, I don't want to say elite, because they're probably going to have to help out a little bit more in run support than we want them to, but I think this is going to be a top-notch unit in the SEC.
Yeah, I obviously think it's the strength of the defense. I know that's no big surprise. Um, but I agree with you completely. Like those four guys, I think you have four very high level players at those positions. I mean, you see it by like their ability to move Alex Safari to linebacker because, Ty Bryant and Jordan Lovett are one very experienced players. And, you're hearing about everything that Ty Bryant's doing right in the throughout training or throughout fall camp here. So I think it's obviously going to be, the strength of this defense and, DJ Waller kind of hitting that, you know, potential that we heard, when we kind of out recruited Michigan for him and we're so excited to have him here. And he's finally kind of hitting that level, I think, towards the end of last year, to your point. I'm very excited for this unit, and I think it's going to be the strength of not just the defense, but probably the best unit on this entire team.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not crazy to say, especially just with the continuity and
Yep.
obviously staying with Brad White and in that defense. I mean, even you kind of look at the backups in those spots. Like you're looking at Jansen Dunn, who played a lot last year, the former Ohio State transfer, to Ryan Nichols, the now sophomore. He played a lot last year towards the back end of the season. So even your backups, normally, last year when we had backups, it was, to Ryan Nichols, hey, you're a true freshman, get out there and play. I know last year you were playing, in Cincinnati at Withrow High School playing who knows whoever after biology, but now you're in the SEC. Good luck. So
Yep.
I think just the depth, and I think that's kind of what we can say for the entire team, really, is this team was actually able to build depth before the season. Last year, I mean, we didn't have a spring game last year because we didn't have enough defensive linemen to play in the spring game.
Yep.
So I think that was something that you saw show itself. I think that's something that, while we might not be an elite team or even a good team or a great team, that's why my status on the team was there's no way I think this team loses more or wins less than 4 games. I think the floor is very, I mean, I don't want to say high because 4 wins is not a high floor, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. And real quick, last point on the secondary. I hope, I don't want Brad White to change his entire philosophy, right? He's been very successful and, as a guy that was talked about, becoming a head coach at a lot of schools. But I would like to see, especially this year when your strength is the secondary, like you don't need to drop 8 in coverage. And I don't think you're going to be able to, to your point of how poor we think this team's going to be defending the run, like send 7 guys, whether it's pass or run, let those safeties and corners, yeah, they're going to get burnt sometimes, but you know what? They're also going to make some plays for you. And I think, they're going to be good enough to kind of hold their own and, a lot of one-on-one opportunities here and there.
I completely agree with you. And I mean, last year was what would you say probably Brad White's worst year, at least in a good while.
I think it was, but I also think it's to your point of the roster construction. He didn't have the guys up front. By the end of the year, teams weren't having to send 2 guys at Dion. He was, I mean, Lane Kiffin talked about it before that Ole Miss game. Like, he's the most dominant player I've seen. I'm going to have to, triple team him. And by the end of the year, you were getting essentially nothing out of that. You had no depth behind it. So I think I would agree it was his worst season, but I also think the roster just wasn't built for what he likes. This year, we're talking about the depth, but your playmakers are in the secondary. Your best players are in the secondary. Let them be your best players and try to help out, in those weaknesses.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. All right. So we've talked about the entire depth chart. We've gotten made our feelings known about these guys.
Yep.
But it is game week. 2 days until we kick off against Toledo. Let's get into it. The Toledo Rockets, the Chip Trainum Bowl. First off, let's just put this out there. I don't know what the anytime touchdown score is for Chip Trainum. You can go ahead. You can cash it. You can cash it. He's scoring. If I have to see what that is on FanDuel, but he's cashing one in. Just in general, to feel good about this game, leave aside the score, leave aside anything like that. To come out feeling good about this game, what do you want to see from this offense and then also on the defense side of the ball as well?
Well, I'll start with the defense. I was actually looking at it, and I was kind of going back and forth on, if I was going to bet this game, would I take the line, or I actually kind of like the Toledo under. They're at 18 right now. I think we hold them to, I don't see them scoring over 17 points. I don't see a world where they go out and get 3 touchdowns against this unit. I mean, this isn't a very good offense from a year ago. They're bringing back most of their pieces with the addition of Chip Trainum, and then they added a highly touted wide receiver out of the portal. But I think, and I've listened to some national bettors. They're talking about they think Toledo's going to have a hard time scoring. That's kind of, I'm leaning towards, I want to see the defense kind of dominate this game. Offensively, I think it's just kind of what we talked about. I want to see them be able to run the football. I don't expect or need them to come out and score 30 plus. I don't think that's going to be the path for success against anybody this season, is to get in like a shootout. So I think, can they come out and run the ball? Does Calzada do what he did last year at Incarnate Word, where he doesn't turn the football over? We don't need him to be the hero and make all these big plays, but run the football, find a couple play actions where you can hit Wall or Macklin deep or somebody on the outside, and that's what I'm hoping for. If they find a way to hold Toledo to 13, 14 points and can score in the low to mid 20s, I'll feel pretty good about this game.
Yeah, I'm going to start on the offensive side of the ball, because this is where I think my take probably differs a little bit. I want to see this team be able to spread it around. Toledo has obviously seen the headlines of what Kentucky wants to do. We haven't been shy about saying we want to get back to Mark Stoops football, run the ball, milk the clock, take our shots when we can. I think Toledo's going to be trying to sell out to stop the run, because especially if that offensive line is moving guys and moving people up front. I think they're going to start putting more people in the box, and it's going to allow for deep shots over the top and just more shots to be taken in general, even if it's not a deep shot, even if it's just a medium 8 to 12-yard reception. I genuinely think this is going to be, I don't know what the line would be on Zach Calzada for passing yards, but I'd probably feel comfortable taking it anywhere over 250. I think Zach Calzada is going to have quite the day. I do think they're going to try and force the run, at least to start. And I think it's going to work. I think they're going to do it well. I think the first drive is going to be probably a 12-play drive in which 9 of them are going to be running the rock and toting the rock like that. But Toledo has ears too. I think they know that we're going to want to run it and play smash mouth football. I think they're going to sell out to stop the run, and I think that's where the offense can really take advantage and kind of get you excited about those receivers that we were talking about. There's a little bit of hesitancy with who is that wide receiver one, and I think that could really spark this team and get us feeling good going into that Ole Miss game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, if Zach Calzada comes out and throws for over 250 and doesn't have multiple turnovers, then I think Kentucky wins pretty easily and kind of runs away. So I would agree that would be a huge sign, and I think if that happens, they win this game by maybe 3 scores.
We'll get there. That's something that I'm gonna predict. So you might have beat me to it a little bit there, but defensively, I just want to see this team be able to stop the run with lighter boxes. I don't want them to have to put more guys up in the box to be able to stop the run, especially against a team like Toledo who doesn't have the firepower up front and is facing a guy that a lot about. Like a lot of these guys, granted, Chip played in 2 official games last year. A lot of these guys know Chip pretty well, and they know what to expect from him. As long as they can stop the run with normal fronts and normal sets without having to put an extra man down there, I'm going to be fine with what this defense does, because even if you let up one deep play, normally, week 1, miscommunications happen. There's going to be some deep play that just happens to arise. I think I'm going to be fine with whatever this defense does for the most part, because I don't see Toledo scoring. I think best case scenario, Toledo scores probably 14 points in this game.
Well, then, yeah, you're right there with me. I think that's going to be the bets we're going to have to lock in, is Toledo under that 18.
Yeah, the line's been moving all week this week. When I first saw my line, I told you I made a clown mistake. The hands up. I wanted to put some money on the Cats. Accidentally took Toledo plus the points. Did not want that at all. Didn't want it at all. And then their over under was 20.5 earlier this week. You had just mentioned it was 18.5. I'm definitely cashing the under, and we'll get to that when we do our score predictions. But I'm feeling good. I don't know if this is just me talking myself into it, but also, I mean, let's just remember something. I know Toledo has a lot of hype behind them. They got a lot of guys returning. This is also still a team that went 4-4 in the MAC last year, and lost to Ohio, who we stomped with nobody in attendance. This should not be a close game. I don't think it will be a close game. I think it's going to be one of those games that at halftime you're looking and it's like a score. Maybe Kentucky's up like 10 or they're up 3, something like that. And people are kind of like sitting on pins and needles being like, oh man, is this really how it's going to start? They'll figure it out. They'll cover the spread. This Kentucky team will win 1-0. And I think you and I, when we meet up on Monday or Tuesday next week to talk about this, we'll have a little bit of smiles on our faces.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could see, I think it'll be one of those first halves where, to your point, maybe the score doesn't look like we're kind of running away with it. But I think it'll be one of those halves where you're like, Kentucky was in control. There was never a moment where, Toledo really felt comfortable. But yeah, Kentucky's only up, a touchdown or something like that at the break. You talked about the line. I mean, this line obviously opened at 10.5, went down to as low as 7.5. Now it's back to 10. Is a better, that's the kind of stuff I look for. The big money comes in closer to game day, and you're starting to see that number tick back up. The guys that sports bet for a living and betting tens of thousands of dollars, and that's what I try to find when I'm looking and diving into a weekend of betting. So, I mean, just from a betting perspective, everything's lining up to tell you that it's going to be Kentucky, and Kentucky should cover that 10.
Yeah, and I fully think they will. Before we give our score predictions for the game, Jake, I've already mentioned my bold take for week 1, and that's Calzada to be over 250, which I think is bold. It's not ridiculous, but I do think it's bold. If I'd ask you for one week 1 bold prediction for this Kentucky team, what is it?
I don't know if there's a super bold prediction. I'll say we will hit one extremely explosive play. I'll say we have a, passing touchdown of, plus 40 yards at some point. I don't know how much of a bold prediction that is, but that'll be kind of what I'm giving out for this game. I also just think this game's just going to be, I don't know if you can really have a bold prediction in this type of game. I think Mark Stoops is going to come in just looking to take care of business pretty much. And, if they do get up 10 in the second half, I don't foresee, that's in part why I don't think Calzada will hit that, 250, because I think once they get the lead, they're just going to pound it and understand that Toledo is probably not going to score on them.
Yeah. See, this is what I thought last year when they brought in Brock, that they were just going to try and pound it, and pound it. And no, they were taking shots well into the second quarter of that game. So for that reason, and usually Stoops in these games, he does try to put a little foot on the throat of these teams. He tries to make it known a little bit, like, hey, listen, we do have the offensive firepower here. Usually week 1 are those weeks that we put up a lot of points, and we do usually throw the ball well in week 1, no matter the opponent. I'm not saying that the 250 is, a lock by any means. Usually bold predictions are not locks. But I think it's got a pretty good shot of hitting, especially because I think Toledo's going to hang around for at least the first half, if not into the third quarter.
Yeah, one thing, 2 points that I think kind of steer me away from that. I think generally you're right, but 2, last year, Chip didn't play in the opener, and he was kind of looked at as your running back, the number 1 guy. You had Barryon and Dane.
There.
Yeah, but you had Barryon and Dane, who coming into the year we were all talking ourselves into, 2 guys that could put themselves in, the top 2 rounds in the NFL draft. And, I think that kind of led to, you wanted to air it out and get the ball to those guys downfield. But also I just think with everything Stoops has kind of heard all season, I think it would make him, more happy to go out and run for 250 yards and hold Toledo to 10 points, 13 points, and him to kind of be able to get back up there and say, we're getting this back to how I want, So while I agree with you that like in the past, he may have wanted to say, look, we have this offense, this is a team that won 4 games a year ago. I think he's going to try to look and say, see what happens when we get back to kind of playing my style. We're back to, so I could see him just pounding that football nonstop. And then again, it all only works if you hold Toledo to under, a few scores, which I think they will, but I think that's going to be his kind of philosophy.
Yeah, I agree. You make some good points. Not going to say I fully agree with you, but you make some good points and, try to talk me off the ledge there with this. But
we're also both playing a dangerous game. We're trying to get in Mark Stoops' head to figure out what he wants to do.
Very dangerous game. Getting any inside information from the University of Kentucky is like trying to get something out of Fort Knox. So It's time. Week 1 of game predictions. Tyler gave his prediction last week with the scores as he did all the way until week 12, which how he can do that this early in the season, I'm not sure. But he did it nonetheless, so you guys can go back to that episode if you want Tyler's opinion. I don't know why you would, but here we are, Jacob and I. We're going to give you our score predictions for this one. Jacob, you want to lead it off, or you want me to go first?
Go for it. You got it. Floor is yours, Mr. Johnson.
All right, sir. So like you mentioned, I'm obviously having Toledo hit the under. You said it was at 18.5. I got Toledo scoring 14 points in this game. I'm balancing between 14 and 13.
Yep.
That, for whatever reason, I'm trying to figure out whether they're going to kick 2 field goals and a touchdown or they're going to find a way to score a second touchdown. I'm going to give them the second touchdown just because it's week 1. There are those, busted coverages, things like that can happen that are just, leaky and can't really predict. For the Cats, I don't know what you said their over-under was. I think it's, like 27.5? It's something around there. I want to say it's the high 20s.
Up to 28.5 now.
28.5? Well, great. I'm still hitting the over. I got the Cats scoring 31 in this one. 4 touchdowns. I think 2 are going to be on the ground. I think 2 will be through the air, which might be the boldest take of them all. I think you'll see Dante Dowdell with at least a touchdown. Put him in there for the anytime bet. They brought him in exclusively to punch the ball in the end zone. You know how many times we struggled with that last year. I got the Cats winning handily, 31-14. They cover the spread. They hit their over. Toledo goes with their under. And we're feeling pretty good heading into week 2.
No doubt about it. I would feel great if that prediction turns out to be true. I'm kind of right there with you. You were saying 13 and 14. For me, I'm between like 13 and 16. I think they only score 1 touchdown, but do they find a way to get that third field goal or not? I'm gonna say they score 16. I still think even it's crazy because it's only 2 points below their under, but like I still feel extremely confident. I don't think they're going to be able to score 2 touchdowns. They might be able to get in field goal range a handful of times. One of those will probably be at the end of the game, when we kind of have it in hand and they kick one of those quote unquote sad field goals with, a minute 40 left and they're down multiple scores. And I got Kentucky right around there, over, under, slightly under. I'll say Cats win 27-16 cover. And again, it doesn't even really feel that close. I think that third field goal, Toledo kind of sneaks in there at the end. But it's never a game that we feel like Kentucky's ever in jeopardy of losing. But I also don't foresee we go out there and just pull away and are at any point ever up 3, 4 scores.
That is such an obscure score. 27-16. If you would have had me, it's just such an obscure number. I mean, how often do you see 16 being put up? It's not that often. I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm just saying, that would, if you put in exact lines on that, you're gonna get a hell of a lot of money on that.
You know what? I might. I don't know if you can do that in college in the state of Kentucky, but if you can, I might dabble a little bit. How about this? If they score exactly 16, you owe me a beer.
I'll buy you a beer regardless, man. Whatever you want. The Cats win, I'll buy you a beer for every Cats win this year.
I'm down with that. That means I get to get you out of the house, too.
Oh, yeah. So, guess what, guys? Cats taking the win over the Rockets. on Saturday. Hopefully, we're going to have some great content for you guys down there. We're going down there, going tailgating to start. Going to interview some people. Going to try and interview some people after the game. We'll see how that goes. See if UK kicks us off for whatever reason. I'm not sure. We probably will. We got the targets on our backs because we're calling it out like we see it. Not really, not at all. But here we are, guys. We'll be back either Monday or Tuesday to recap the game and preview the Ole Miss game. Find us on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Follow us on X, on Instagram, whatever. We're on whatever it is, TikTok especially. We're going to have a lot of good content for you guys this weekend. Jacob, you got a fantasy draft on Saturday. You'll be watching the Cats. You already mentioned it at Dickman's. You gonna get any Cats? A late round Ray Davis to send it off, maybe?
I mean, we got to see how it falls, but I mean, the goal is to maybe sneak Ray in there.
I love it. All right, guys, we'll be back with you next week. Hopefully, the Cats start off the season 1-0, like Jacob and I are both predicting. With that being said, that's all we got for you today. Go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue.